Trusted AI from Hype to Impact by KJR.
Welcome to Trusted AI from Hype to Impact. It's a podcast brought to you by KJR, Australia's trusted advisor in software quality engineering and AI adoption. My name is Mark Pedersen, and in this episode, we're going to be talking with Dawid Naude from Pathfindr. So every one of these episodes, we're talking with leaders and experts who are shaping the future of responsible AI adoption. And we sort of explore what it takes to move from the hype to building AI that's ethical, effective, enterprise ready, and actually delivers some value. So if you enjoy this conversation, you know, the usual story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay connected. Yeah, look, it's a pleasure. We've only recently, been able to align our schedules, Dawid, to meet up. Thanks so much for taking some time to sit down and have a yarn.
No worries at all. I'm looking forward to this.
So, I think one of the things that would be really great to sort of, just get a little bit more of the background. As I said, on the KJR side, we're really interested in that sort of like trusted AI. How do you do that assurance? That's our piece of the puzzle. But you've been doing a lot of work to actually help people grapple with what's the impactful way of deploying this stuff and how to actually get started. That's sort of the background to how we met, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and also, so our journey's also it's been quite a journey. So we at the beginning with Pathfindr, when I started it was mostly we were building complex implementations, and I always looked at ChatGPT as a great demo of LLMs and what they can do. But to get the value of AI, you'd need to do some complex things. But as these platforms have become, as the apps, as opposed to the APIs, have become far more powerful and integrated, we've realized that it's actually a really fundamental starting point for businesses is using an off-the-shelf tool to its greatest ability, which comes with two big challenges. One is like adoption. How do you actually get people to use it for important things and not just like simple things? How to use it strategically instead of just like light productivity. And the second is bigger challenge, which is part of our discussions, is how do you govern it, given there's certain things you can control and certain things you can't. And also, even if you can, like, we're still figuring out how to test this technology. I mean, it's a fascinating area to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and it's been quite a roller coaster ride. Like every week, there's something new coming out. Now we're up to GPT-5, etc. on that OpenAI side of things. There's more and more open weights models coming out. So there's lots to be excited about. Just quickly, like, what are some of the use cases or the applications that are actually getting you excited? And also, what are the things that you might be, losing sleep over?
Yeah, so we get excited when we see people using AI to using it more strategically, and also in some ways using it selfishly. So using it to do to be a better leader in one particular case as well. So it's very easy to treat AI as a productivity tool, but we think it's much more like an intelligence tool, because people get really excited about summarizing meetings, and that's great. But you should try use. Well, first of all, the meeting probably didn't need to happen anyways, as any software engineer will immediately recognize. It's time taken away from, it's time to talk about work instead of doing work. But it's so pervasive. But let's assume that the meeting did have to happen. Instead of using AI to document the meeting, try use AI to figure out to not need the meeting in the first place. Like that's, we're really challenging people. Don't look at this as simply doing your job faster, because I don't think most people's customers, the number one thing they want is not for you to be cheaper. your product to be cheaper as a company. That's not the number one thing that they want. Of course, they'd like that, but it's not the number one thing they want. They're already comfortable paying the price that they're paying. And also, they don't want you to respond to emails quicker or to run meetings better. That's not the thing that they want from you. They want you to show up in all sorts of different ways. And one place that is brilliant to start that I get so excited about is any leadership team, now that even ChatGPT and Claude are all integrated into Outlook and SharePoint and Teams, run a deep research agent and ask it to interview you first about your priorities and goals, and then to go through all of your work activity and have an honest reflection about how you're spending your time, like to meet those goals. And as long as you're using the deep research feature, it's going to take a while. In Copilot, you have to use the research agent. It's going to take about half an hour, but it's going to produce a 25-page white paper on how you're spending your time, and ask it to come up with 10 recommendations. And it is alarming how it's, in some ways you knew this, but it's confronting when you're met with the data of saying you have these goals, and you have these things you'd like to achieve, but you're not actually doing anything towards those things. And even in my case, it came back with, it was so brutal. It came back with and said, you're operating like a highly effective project manager, not as a business owner or business leader. You're jumping from client to client, and it was just fascinating. And it cited all the data, and then came with 10 highly specific recommendations, even naming particular people. So you should get Arrow, who's our ops person, to protect your time for like a CEO or strategic deep thinking time. You should delegate more to these two people. It's time to give them that access. So that's what I get excited about, not like summarizing meeting minutes.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's all too easy to not look in the mirror, right? And you mentioned like the challenges around governance. So what we're seeing is probably, almost two camps. There's people are like, oh no, AI bad, too dangerous, don't turn on, or AI all good, let's just go. What could possibly go wrong? And trying to sort of straddle that sort of binary way of thinking about things is interesting. Are you seeing much of that kind of approach to things? And are there things where you're seeing people sort of like go, oh, let's just use it for this, and you go, really?
Yeah, so I think most of the impact is in the camp that aren't being deliberate about it. So they're going, oh, we need to first make sure we figure out how to use it, get our governance right and all of that. So we're not going to turn it on. Or they've built their own in-house tool, which is, they'll say it's the same as ChatGPT because it's on Azure, uses GPT-4 or whatever, I guess now GPT-5. But it's typically not a good tool. And they're just trying to feature match what ChatGPT does, and instead of actually leveraging it in an additional way, like using your own information or that. And so people still default to using these other tools. And so if you're a company that has this approach of being so conservative that you're not going to give access, you've actually created the very risk that you wanted to stop. You've created that risk. So there's a great tool that's available out there, but you haven't given them access. And that's something to really lean into, is that there is no perfect answer here. There's only trade-offs. And the trade-off is either we create a risk that we can control and we're deliberate about it through education and all that, or we create a risk that we can't control. And we've seen in the most extreme cases, and whenever I talk about this, I see people's heads nodding because they've seen it happen themselves. If you even block it at the firewall, let's say you block a ChatGPT at the firewall, your staff will still take out their phone on their personal license and take a photo of it, to help solve an Excel problem that they're having or something like that. And think of just the additional risk you've just introduced there. Now this photo is syncing to like a Google Photos, it's on their personal phone, to an iCloud Photos.
Yeah.
It's all of that type of thing. So I think it's being mature and adult about this and going, look, this is a very strange technology. I often just describe it as weird tech. Like we've never had tech that can simultaneously like write an Australian style hip hop rap about a governance document and do a comprehensive deep dive on an industry that you've never interacted with, but also can lie to you. You know, like Copilot's like lies. It'll say it sent an email. And then you'll go, I don't think you did. And it'll say, oh, I'm so sorry. You're right. I didn't. It's like, what? Like, this is very, this is very strange technology, but you have to lean into it because there's lots of value. It's hugely valuable. And your staff are already using it. They're just not using it in the right way. And you have to lean into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I completely agree. The shadow AI, challenge is real. And those kind of, sensitive information leakages that will happen, sort of regardless, is a good reason for bringing in both, and governance is not like a policy document, right? Like governance is about building some processes and some tools and some education that mean that people know how to use this stuff. And I think, there's so many automobile analogies, but it did take people a while to work out, hey, maybe we should make seatbelts mandatory. And by and large, most people are like, yeah, that's a really good idea. I'm going to use them. So I think there's things like that we're still working out around this kind of tech. In terms of like going a bit deeper into those kind of like, how do we get past a proof of concept stage? Like, what are you sort of seeing? Because I think this is what I see a lot is people do exactly what you say. Oh, we want to have an internal RAG. We set something up. Great. It answers some really cool questions. And then they a little bit further into the trial, like, it hallucinates, or it lied to us about this, or it got confused about that. I don't think we could roll this out to customers. Maybe we could give it to, our help desk staff, but, we don't think it's quite ready yet. And so then it sort of becomes a bit too hard. And then it was a great pilot, but it didn't end up delivering any business value. And I think it's that mix of like going, how do we build the trust, but also how do we build the skill to know when to trust a tool or how to use the tool in a reliable way. You got some insights around that from, basically you talk to a lot of people not just around the country, but around the world, right?
Yeah. And also we've got a lot of experience in getting adoption and getting through these things. So there's only one. Okay. So the first thing is, actually, particularly in Australia, we're very conservative when it comes to technology, and also we're typically later adopters. But one of the big differences is your staff are already using this, as are your customers. And so whether you care about AI or not, AI cares a lot about you, and whether AI is on your agenda or not, you're definitely on AI's agenda, like as a company, because your staff are already using it, right? And your industry is being impacted. We started with like these narrow, complex use cases, which you do have fine-grained control. Engineers love it because if it's for a particular use case, let's say it's complaints management or something like that, and you're in a call center and you want it to, if there's a complaint, you want it to automatically grab all of the information out of the CRM and pull it all in a nice briefing. Even if there's so many nuances with that, you could direct different models to different tasks and all of that type of thing. But with all of that, there's like, it's one use case and it's a lot of engineering effort. And that's kind of the opposite to what we've realized AI is. AI is much more of a general purpose technology, and so good with ambiguity. And with the example you gave there, so because it's a general tool, It also means that to use it, first of all, even to find the ways to use it is a journey to go on. Most people not really sure what to use it for, so they default to these things. We've to very simple things and not broad adoption. What we found is the actually not only the number one, but the only way to getting impact with AI is you have to start with your leadership team. Now, that's not new for technology, but it is different in one unique way. If you're doing like a CRM rollout, your CEO doesn't necessarily need to be a user of the CRM. They just need to state how important it is and drive the budget and priority and all of that. With AI, what we've realized is your leadership team need to be using AI, not talking about it, not a strategy, not a governance framework. They need to be users of it. That's the first thing. The second thing is they each need to nominate a couple of people to each leader to be their champions. And these are the people that actually figure out the next level of detail. And so you as a user, you as a leader in the contact center, you might be using AI to help come up with an AI strategy. And you realize that AI is great at voice. And you could even just be doing that using like voice mode on ChatGPT and asking it to behave like a call center agent. And it's going to prove to you, wow, this is actually really good at that. But the next level down is hugely important with directing this champions group on actually figuring out the different AI plays and workflows and how it works. Now, it's a smaller group. It's a trusted group, but they pave the way of figuring out AI's role, what it's good at and bad at within the company. Now, at the end of that, you'll have a view, and we also recommend use an off-the-shelf tool. Use Copilot, use ChatGPT, because it's a tacky way of describing it, but it's a great gateway drug into AI because it allows you to prove out the technology without having to invest in it. And so if let's say you are in a call center for somewhere that does vehicle claims assessments, and they send you photos of a car accident, and you can paste that into ChatGPT or Copilot and see can it identify what type of car it is, and the next thing, can it identify the level of damage? And this is for your champions group. Now, are you going to scale like that as a workflow across your call center? Of course not. Like, it's too variable. But your champions have figured it out. They said this was like 95% of the way there, just with this prompt in ChatGPT or Copilot. Now you can work with your tech team to figure out how do we get it to 99%, and also that we don't need to prompt at all. Like, we build it into the CRM. You push a button, you forward it to a mailbox, and all of that. So, but it's through this champions group that you find those use cases. One area that we constantly see is lawyers. They all agree that it can summarize and interpret law very, very well. None of them agree on how it writes contracts, because they all have their own way of writing contracts. But if you go through one or two lawyers, instead of throwing the whole project out, they say it was great. It's great at like a front door for if somebody has an NDA that they want us to review. It goes in here and it does an initial quick assessment and says, we're probably not going to approve this because it needs these 3 changes. And so you don't have their time wasted. They go fix those changes, and then they send it back to the lawyer, or they have reasons why they're asking for those changes. It's a strategic client or whatever, right? They can still draft the whatever they want contract afterwards that way. But it is such an easy way. If you gave like a tool to all of your lawyers, one would use one part of it, another would use another, and it'd be such noise like on how valuable they find it. If you start with a small group to pave the way, that's the right way to do it. And from there, you'll have a list of, within 3 weeks, you'll have a list of probably like 30, 40 different use cases from across the business and how effective they are at different things and candidates for actually rolling out. Now you can turn that not only into projects, but into like change management material. Like, let's say Copilot's good enough. You can, instead of like a Copilot 101 for particular use cases, it's like, hey, here's how we use Copilot in marketing at KJR. these are the 3 ways we use it. These are the 3 ways we don't. And you even have demos already recorded from the champions group that have been using it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that, you know, at KJR, we've talked a lot about this sort of like verification driven machine learning kind of concept, which is really around, we've got these massively general tools that have a lot of capability, but you've got to do exactly that process to start with, understanding what's the task you want to do and get really clear about that. And then you can do some assessment around, what would be the risks? So if you were to roll out like the accident assessment sort of tool, then are there some privacy risks potentially if there's photos, those sorts of things? How would you manage that? It's not to say don't do it, but it's more like, here are the controls that we can put in place that are going to be good enough for that use case. Or you might determine, actually, that one's too difficult, or it's the return's not there, but there's a simpler thing. We've been doing a lot of work, like lots of people get excited about using AI in healthcare and applying it directly to clinical problems. Obviously, there's, that raises all sorts of challenges around, is it biased? Is it giving the right answers? A doctor's not paying enough attention if you started to roll that out. One of the much better use cases that we've come into contact with through some of our work in the health sector is like you've got highly trained, specialized clinicians basically filling in spreadsheets to do the coding for the surgery or other clinical activity that's taken place so that the administrators can put in the right kind of funding claims. So don't take the human out of the loop, but you can easily use all of that history. It is slightly messy data, so you can't just write a rule for it, but you can have a large language model do the first pass and then give that to clinician to go, yep, that's correct. Actually, that's wrong. Let's change that. And the job can be done in, 5 minutes instead of 30 minutes. And that's that in terms of making good use of specialist human expertise. That's gained some traction, and the risk profile is much lower. Still requires a lot of testing. Like there's no way that you could roll that solution out without having some confidence that it's actually getting to a threshold where those busy clinicians aren't going, oh no, it's wrong. Oh, that one's wrong as well. And then they lose confidence and go, throw this out. I might as well just do it myself.
Exactly, and it's such a good example because there's also, broadly speaking, there's 2 types of risks. There's like an actual potential, let's say, security risk, real risk, whatever you want to call it. But then there's just simply a compliance risk, which is it might be completely secure, it might be perfect, but it's not compliant because the relationship between regulation and technology is not simple. And it takes a while for it to get correct if it ever does. For those of us who were involved with like Salesforce and SaaS hitting Australian shores, kind of 2010-ish onwards, there were no data centers here for those platforms, and it took ages. It took and it was a whole industry as well of these encryption platforms and all of that to make sure that that you can use Salesforce as a bank here, but it figured it out, and eventually banks but it was mostly like APRA and the regulators and that becoming comfortable. We're okay with data being about our customers being shared with the US, as long as these types of things aren't shared, and as long as there's so many controls that restrict that. So it's kind of going through the same thing here, and I think also there is you want to be deliberate. You want to be able to openly say to somebody, 100% AI could do this thing, but we're not allowed to. And we're working with the regulator at the moment, trying to get them comfortable with this. But let's not discount the fact that AI is very good in these other 6 areas that are going to make a huge impact to your day. And you want to constantly talk about that. Don't help remove the noise, not create the noise through ambiguity. Help remove the noise and say, we think that there's AI can help in this area, and that's why we've got this champions group that is currently working at what level of accuracy can we get just with off-the-shelf models without even extra hard work, because we've got to maintain these things. Every time we do custom work, we introduce technical like work for us in the future to maintain it. And so we want to go as far as we can with these things. The other thing is we look at AI as 3 helpers that a company gets per person. You get an assistant, which is kind of grad level administration tasks. You get a thinker, which is more of your advisor, your PhD. They read every book in your field. They can think very deeply. You get your creator, so creating video, audio, code, things like that. And so if you think of that medical example there, it doesn't need to actually do a diagnosis or something for you. It doesn't need to use the thinker. That can still be respected for the person who's doing that, but you can certainly make all of their other work so much easier by the assistant, so this admin person who helps them, because they're probably only spending 20% of their time actually using their skills properly. The other 80%, they're doing things that they were good at in the first year of their career.
Yeah.
And that's the tragedy. All this great experience wasted.
Yeah. We still spend way too much time, writing formulas in spreadsheets or things like that. Absolutely. And one of the things that you mentioned, it kind of sparks a thought for me about regulation and technology change. So we, from KJR's perspective, we've often been involved in safety critical systems, and one of the pieces of work I got to do a while back was sort of doing independent safety assessment around railway system control. So software that is going to be controlling railway systems. And obviously there's a safety standard that applies to that. And, the risks, if that goes wrong, are obviously quite extreme. And the way that those standards are written is that, if you do a bad job, you're potentially personally liable as an engineer as well. So everyone takes the quality process very seriously. And one of the interesting challenges that came up on that project is that the standard kind of mandates or calls out, and it's been revised since then, but the standard calls out specific programming languages that are kind of approved. And part of the assumption is that if you're writing a train control system, you're writing all of the code. And so there's a requirement that you unit test all of your code, and then you do system testing around all of your code. And this particular developer was like, oh, but we're using this does date this story. We're using Microsoft.NET, and so so they were moving away from like the assumption that everything's written in Ada. And so the question is like, it comes with all these libraries. We don't have the source code. We can't unit test all the libraries. We have to make an assumption that this code is actually safe. So part of the building up of that independent safety case was like, what other controls are we putting around this to de-risk the fact that code, was not written by you. And that was completely acceptable. Like, even though it wasn't written into the standard, in terms of, that got presented to, the relevant Australian regulator, and they were like, yeah, we're happy with that as a safety argument. You can proceed with building this solution. And a lot of it is really about coming up with, well, what are the other practical controls that you put around stuff? So, again, your example of SaaS or these other solutions coming in that don't fit with what, the current regulatory framework looks like, doesn't mean that the risk is completely unmanageable, nor does it mean that you can just ignore the risk. It's like, we'll do these other things to make that work. And that's definitely the sort of thing that we find ourselves being called upon to do, is like, how can we make some testing repeatable? Because people might do lots of testing around their sort of, even if they're using directly, GPT-4, and they've done a bunch of prompt engineering, and then they manually tested the way that is working for them, and they want that to be a repeatable process. 5 drops with not a lot of notice really, and no extensive list of release notes. And there's really no way, probably even for OpenAI or anyone else, to say, here's exactly how the behavior is different. So what you really end up needing is a way of doing some repeatable testing to go, oh, well, the model's changed a bit, or maybe a lot. How's the behavior different? Do we need to make some adjustment to it? Because this is where people are building solutions on top of these platforms that are maybe, quite variable. Doesn't mean it's unmanageable. It just means you've got to have a kind of clever, systematic approach to it. Does that kind of stuff hit some of the people that you work with, where the pace of change is, outstripping what they're used to consuming?
It's the pace as well as the level of control that we have. And like you said there, there's two levels that are just completely out of our control. Like whether you decide to lean into AI or not, it's going to have your company's using it already, because your engineers are using it, you have power users that are using it, even your leaders are using it, and it has an impact to your company. So you need to be deliberate about that at all as a starting point. The second point is that we have far less control of it than we think, because this is a strange tool, and even like the whole GPT-5 release, it's hints, and then all of a sudden, an X post about a live stream, and then it's live, and this is not like comprehensive release notes. First of all, because even if they wanted to, they couldn't. Like there's certain things that you don't really know how it behaves. And that's one of the fascinating things at one of the OpenAI podcasts. I think it was the second one with their new podcast that they have, but one of the I think it's their chief research officer or something like that. He was saying they've realized that this is a technology that needs to be studied less so than designed. And I just thought that was fascinating, because every other technology we design down to the pixel of how it will behave. Whereas in this case, you kind of put a whole bunch of data together, train it up, and then see how it works. And even the concept of like emergent features is so bizarre that features and capabilities just emerge out of AI. Like they didn't know it could summarize, they didn't know it could translate, they certainly didn't know it could like create Hilltop Hood style rap off of a PDF. These things just kind of emerged, and afterwards you have to reflect on like how did it do that. And there's even a whole field called mechanistic interpretability, where they're trying to reverse engineer how these things behave. Like imagine creating a CRM and then actually assigning a whole team to go figure out how it was built. Like that's crazy. Like we've never had that before. And I think it's acknowledging that this is challenging us in new ways, but there is lots of value out there. But it's a completely different mindset and approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we could probably keep chatting all day, but in terms of sort of drawing things to a bit of a conclusion, do you have a couple of key bits of almost like homework, if people are listening, and what are some of the things that you have found can tilt the needle in terms of that organizational impact? Like you've talked about getting that leadership group and getting people using it and getting the champions in place, in terms of really not just tweaking productivity, but making that kind of like strategic impact. Any homework that you might set for people?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll talk about leadership team and champions, because it really does start with the leadership team. So the first is to know when to use reasoning models and research agents. Now in Copilot, this is simply clicking the research agent on the left panel. If you don't see that, it means that you don't have the right license using the free version of Copilot and not a paid one. In ChatGPT, it's just clicking the plus and saying deep research to do that. Claude has a research button, as does Gemini has a deep research feature as well. So that's the first part. The second part is knowing when to use reasoning models. Now, GPT-5 is going to make this a lot easier, because it's going to decide when to do it or not. So in the past, Copilot didn't let you do this. You could kind of hack it in the analyst agent, but you couldn't do it in the past with Copilot. In ChatGPT, you could flip it to the O3 model. Now, the reason why the research and the reasoning model is really important is because it's a much more elevated thinking from AI and problem solving and all of that. So you're going to be able to hand it proper problems to be solved, like strategy and critique and reflection and all of that. With GPT-5, it's going to try figure out when to use the reasoning models for you. So like if you're in Copilot, tell it think deeply, because you can't actually say use GPT-5. No, you can't tell it use GPT-5 thinking in Copilot. It's going to use GPT-5, but if you tell it, I want you to think deeply, I want you to be thorough, it's going to trigger the reasoning model, and you actually see it thinking. In ChatGPT, I'd still say go to GPT-5 and then change it to the GPT-5 thinking. That's really, really important. So those are the fundamental first two. Then after that, on a deep research activity, the first thing you should do in Copilot, make it go through all of your emails, things like that, get it to interview you to find out what your priorities are, and do like a real reflection on whether or not you're really operating aligned to what your goals are. Okay, that's the starting point. The second thing is ask it to do a full competitive analysis and start with, can you interview me? And then do a full competitive analysis against all my competitors on their AI, what they're likely to be doing with AI versus what we're doing. If you use the deep research features, you're going to get a very comprehensive answer, which will be really good. And then the third thing is you don't have to use the research agent for this, but you make sure you use a reasoning model. So tell GPT-5 to think really hard. Ask it to interview you and come up with the top 5 ways that you could have an impact with AI within the next 6 months. And that immediately, and if it comes back with something like complex or whatever, tell it, no, like I don't have much budget. Like I've got to show high impact. This is the technology that I'm operating within, all of that, and just have a long conversation with it. So those are 3 things. One bonus point, get ChatGPT onto your phone, open it up. There's a black button with kind of a white squiggle in the prompt input, which if you push that, it opens up advanced voice mode. And put your AirPods in, go for a walk, and have a long conversation with ChatGPT, asking it to teach you about AI. And that has a huge impact. Like using AI to teach you about AI is fascinating. And the final thing as well with that, start playing with it at home as well. So take a photo of the contents of your fridge with ChatGPT and ask what you can cook for dinner. Put ChatGPT on voice mode and ask one of your kids what their favorite topic is, and play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Like tell it, we're playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire on poison dart frogs. Like my son loves poison dart frogs. Put it on voice mode. You're going to have a lot of fun with that. There's the reason why this is so powerful is it makes you aware of what the technology is capable of. Because if you can play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with voice with your kids at home, just through a mobile app that costs you like $20 a month, imagine what you could do in your call centers with defined processes and all that. If you can take a photo of the contents of your fridge and it comes up with a recipe incredibly well, imagine what you could do with image and video within factories and warehouses. Now imagine if all of your leadership team are doing that, and imagine if this champions group, if all of them are playing with it, all of a sudden you see all these ideas coming up, but then they're also using the reasoning models and research agents to really critique whether or not this is a really good thing to go after, or if there's other approaches. I know I've said final point like 5 times, but here's a final point. Even if you still have like, let's call it AI block, you can't come up with ways to use it, before your next presentation, before your next proposal, before your presentation to a board, if you're a CEO or something like that, put the contents in the tool that you have approval to use and ask it, what are 10 difficult questions the board may ask me? And so you're using it to make better decisions, to be better prepared, and just for advice and reflection. So that also works incredibly well.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think I was listening to a presentation just the other day about how we can anticipate large language models helping us to really I find programming is a really good way of clarifying my intent. Like, I might write some loose, requirements, but when I actually have to code it, then it's like, oh, what do I really mean? And the whole point of this presentation, it was one of the team at OpenAI talking about large language models, are really good at producing code now. So what we have to be really good about is clear thinking and really clear communication of intent. And I think the things that you're talking about there is about using these tools to help us be clearer thinkers and clearer communicators about what it is that we really want to achieve, and to do that kind of reflection. And I think that's, from my perspective, getting really good quality requirements, like really being clear about your intent. It's getting easier to turn those requirements into code, and code that's like tested and does work. And from a quality engineering perspective, that's the kind of thing that we've been dreaming of for 50 plus years or whatever. So it's exciting to be seeing that starting to come into fruition. But I think what that requires of us as an industry and as individuals is to become clearer thinkers and clearer communicators. So I think a lot of the stuff that you're doing with Pathfindr is helping organizations tilt the needle in that respect.
Yeah, and one of the things, particularly with vibe coding, I think that people have misunderstood is I don't think it's not about creating all sorts of code incredibly quickly. And people talk about replacing engineers with AI. I mean, that's garbage. Like, there's no. As soon as you start going down that path, you realize we're going to need way more engineers than we need today, because there is going to be the demand for code is going to go up so much, given that we're going to be able to build so much more of it so much quicker. There's so many problems to solve. Ask any corporate employee in the world if they're happy with their systems, and they're going to tell you no. It's horrible. So there's going to be a huge demand for way more code and more engineers. And the role of an engineer, yes, will change as the shape of any job does when there's a new technology. But one of the things that I get excited about by vibe coding is the people who can't code. Now, I'm not talking about actually shipping that to production, but in your example there about requirements, imagine saying to your end user, can you actually create what you think the whole front end should look like? And can you, now I'm not saying that you're going to go and implement that front end as it is, but there's scope creep comes from many things, but one of the core things is that people don't know what they want until they see it. So imagine if you can see it without wasting any engineer's time, and then what you get is a fully mocked up prototype from a business analyst, and you might then look at that and go, okay, great. So to align to our architecture, this is what we'd need we can bring these components onto the front page. This would have to live in this part of the system, that type of thing. How much faster has your whole project just just accelerated so much? So I think that's where I get hugely excited, and it's just so much more fun. Even with things like video generation, like Google's VO3, which is just brilliant at generating 8-second video clips, because it has all of YouTube as a training data set. The marketers, that they shouldn't look at this as a threat or anything like that. It's either going to give you great footage that you can include, but even if it doesn't, imagine your first marketing meeting about a new campaign is, I want you all to bring your your 3 top 8-second videos that demonstrate like a concept for a campaign that we want to run for the next quarter. Imagine if that's your first meeting. Like you actually review 12 8-second videos that each have a completely feel and vibe and focus, and then you decide like what are two that we actually want to push forward as a further concept to explore. So I think completely reimagining your core workflows using this tool, and you can see there with those ideas, like the mock-up of the prototype of the CRM or the marketing one, it's actually been used as like a decision-making, requirements extraction, strategic extraction process instead of, hey, let's document it quicker. Like it's actually fundamentally changed that process. Yeah.
Look, we're over time. We need to wrap. Thank you so much. We'll include links to Pathfindr. You offer various masterclasses and other sorts of, deeper dives on all of these sort of topics. And I think we will no doubt be catching up again to dig deeper into the sort of overlap between that enablement and assurance kind of space. But thanks again for your time. And
no worries. Thanks a lot for
soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. And I mean, also just if you go to startlearning.ai, that'll just link you to our next masterclass. We put them on every month. They're free. Great to see you and your team there. Feel free to bring as many people as you like, and we'll just make you aware of what's available. So fantastic. Great chat though, Mark, and looking forward to catching up again.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much. And of course, if people have enjoyed this conversation, then do the good old like, subscribe, etc. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you back for more conversations around trusted AI innovation sometime soon.